Terrific. Okay, so welcome and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel meeting of the 11th of July. My name's Tony Arias and I'm the presiding member. I'll introduce the other panel members. Francesca Lacanti, who's the deputy presiding member, and Ian Birch, who's the specialist member. For Part B, which is Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale, we have Councillor Mack and Councillor Duggan. And for Part C, Shire of Waroona, we have Councillor Wamsley and Councillor Purcell. We have from the DAP Secretariat, Claire Ortlet, Minute Secretary, and Zoe Henry, Governance, keeping an eye on all of us. And we have a number of applicants and Shire officers in attendance as well. So welcome all. So with that, I will formally declare the meeting open at 9:32 and acknowledge the traditional owners and pay respects to elders past and present of the land on which the meeting is being held. The meeting will be run in accordance with DAP Standing Orders 2024. Members may refer to technical devices to assist them in considering information that's before them. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 40(2)A of the regulations. Item 2, apologies. We do have an apology from Councillor Coles from Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale. Item 3, members of leave on leave of absence, we have nil. Item 4, just noting the minutes. Previous meetings are on the DAP website. So we move to Part B, Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale. Item 1, Part B, declarations of due consideration. Members, can you please confirm and declare that you have duly considered the information that's been provided in the agenda, including Part B? Declare that, or duly declared. Thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. We have 2 disclosures one from Councillor Mack and one from Councillor Duggan, noting that the item under consideration has gone to the council meeting, but both members have declared that they can deal with the matter with impartiality and not bound by the council decision. Members, are there any other declarations to be made? No. No. Thank you. Duly noted. So we move to item 3, Form 1 DAP applications, and item 3.1, proposed childcare premises, Lawrence Way, Byford. We do have one presenter, Josh Watson from Planning Solution. Josh, you've done a lot of these. You know that you have 3 minutes. So hopefully. Yep. And obviously, opportunity for members to ask questions of you later. Yep.
Thank you, presiding member, and good morning, panel members. I'm Josh Watson from Planning Solutions. I'm the applicant in support of the proposed 96 Place Childcare Centre in Lawrence Street in Byford. We're pleased to see the development recommended for approval today. We've worked with the Shire and Andrew and his team from pre-lodgement through the development application process today and worked through design, and I think that's evident in the positive report to the panel today. So I'd like to thank Andrew and his team for working with us through that. In terms of the layout and design of the centre, we're very cognizant of making sure make sure the centre works functionally, but also respects the emerging character of the area, as well as the street and residential context around. So I think we've got that balance right in the design in front of you today. And we've also had that supported by the necessary traffic, acoustic, bushfire assessments and the like, which ensures that the design is functional and practical as well. I think this will be an important piece of community infrastructure, and it's always good for these emerging communities to have that community infrastructure from early on in the process, so that residents can be provided with the necessary childcare facilities as these suburbs grow. I'm fully supportive of the officer recommendation, and I don't propose any changes to that. I think the conditions are all reasonable, and appropriate for this type of development. And we're looking forward to getting this one out of the ground next year, ideally following an approval. So happy to answer any questions from the panel.
Thanks, Josh. Members, questions? Josh?
No, Brandon. Sure, thank you. Hi, Josh, how are you going? I have a couple of questions. My questions all relate to the same thing, and I have similar questions to officers as well. It relates to condition 12, submission of a revised bushfire management plan, and it relates to the DFS comments in the report, and it is page 9, just as a pointer for both parties. There are a number of matters that have been raised in response to the document submitted. The recommendation includes a condition for an amended plan to be provided as part of the determination. My question essentially goes to probing the ability to achieve an appropriate BAL and therefore facilitate a determination today. Particularly, my questions relate to issues such as BAL rating about an inclusion of land that's beyond the border, the boundary of your site, and the extent to which you are reliant on sites outside of your of the development site, the subject site, in order to achieve the necessary BAL to facilitate the development you have. That's question 1. And the same sort of question relates to comments about distance to the water hydrant and the ability to resolve that, and whether there's any further information you can provide on the ability to resolve that. Now, they've indicated here that there is concern that you cannot reach the proposal can't reach the reticulated, it's unclear if the reticulators would meet the Water Corp's provisions. So I suppose my question really goes to those two elements and about whether or not the development can in fact go ahead, or are these matters, have you investigated these matters in a manner that we can comfortably make a determination on this proposal today?
I'll start with question 2. So the fire hydrant, now our client's actually gone and had the hydrant tested, so to ensure around the pressure. And from that, we actually meet the pressure, but also what they're going to be doing on site is putting the fire hydrant on site as well, so that they can connect into that. So it's the extra bit that I think DFS have said there. So that'll be part of the building process. So they're quite confident that those can be met quite easily, and it's not insurmountable. So in relation to the first item, you've probably seen the belt contour map. The majority of the sites bell low with half about bell 12, and a lot of the vegetation on the neighbouring bits of land has been classified appropriately, and the verge areas. We would still be under bell 29 and under, even if the verges were incorporated. So we feel very comfortable that there's just some minor tweaking as part of this. And from my understanding, the verges need to be maintained to a satisfactory level. And there's just some nuances there. But we actually have the necessary and appropriate separation to ensure that there is the bushfire outcome of bell 29 or below for this type of development. So we've spoken with our bushfire consultant, and they don't have any issues with this DFS comment, and feel comfortable they can address this as part of an updated BMP that we can provide as a condition of approval.
Thank you. So that's my first set of questions regarding the DFS comments. I have the exact same questions to officers, so you can prepare for the responses. And essentially what I'm really aiming at is getting clarity that a determination can be made on that particular aspect. It read from my perspective as potentially it could require changes, but thank you for clarification on that. My second question is about your design, and particularly fencing. Typically we would see a level of openness of fencing. I know the design includes some. Could you talk about the design and its streetscape interface, noting that it has three street interfaces, with the building parking being on the non-street interface side, which is unusual, and that results in large fencing on much of the facades. Could you talk about how this proposal is appropriate in the context of the streetscape, or whether additional, and I suppose my question is around whether additional openness of fencing is appropriate facing the street in the context of its location?
So in terms of the layout, we're really cognizant of ensuring the appropriate outcomes on the residential properties as well that are directly above. So you'll see that's why it is very clear to have that car parking on that side adjacent to the residential properties, generally around noise to neighbours, and we want to ensure that the impact on those residential properties is minimised. And also with this aspect here, we designed it in a way that we could have a bit of through access that actually assists in waste removal, so trucks can come in, have the waste removed, and then they can exit. It means that the waste management is done a lot easier. So we worked with that, and also we wanted to have good northern exposure on with the main play area, which resulted in us having that play space go from the north around to the east. So in terms of fencing, we were cognizant on the corner of Orton Road that we had appropriate solid fencing there. That's going to be an intersection. There's a level of safety and that aspect there. So that'll be reinforced on that corner, and as well as at the opposite corner of May Street and Lawrence Way. With operators, it's a fine balance between ensuring the privacy and activities of the childcare centre, but also making sure we're having a good planning outcome on the interface of the street. So it's that fine balance. The operators like to have a good level of protection of sight lines to the toilet areas and the like from people from the public. There's going to be play space and whatnot within those areas. So making sure that balance between solid wall and visual permeability is reached, and we've worked with the operator as well as the Shire on this, and that's where we sort of got that balance, and that's why we do have the majority of our openness towards Lawrence Way, and then the corners are solid, and then we bring that back around to the residential properties as well. And we need to make sure we achieve that acoustic outcome too, so that we meet the noise regulation. So we feel we've got that balance right, and we're also supported with the Lawrence Way with appropriate landscaping trees that we're proposing on doing as well.
And as I see from the plans, there are 3 sections on Lawrence Way, is that correct?
That's right.
That are the open fencing.
That's right.
Metal fencing. Those are my questions at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burks, you had some questions?
No, I just was in relation to bushfire, and I just noticed there seemed to be a bit to do. And you've sort of addressed some of those issues raised by DFS.
Yep.
And you're confident.
Yeah, we're confident.
That was just the same question.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions of Mr. Watson?
Nothing.
No, thank you, John.
Thank you, Mara.
We have Andrew Trosser here from the Shire. Andrew, if you want to move forward, I think Francesca had some questions similar to you might want to put to you in terms of bushfire management. Are you able to respond? Yep.
Thank you. My questions are essentially both questions are the same to yourself as they were to Josh. As I prefaced, the questions around Val are the ability for the proposal, as we're presently seeing it, to achieve those elements that have been raised for modification. There are a number of modifications required, and I'm cognizant that in some instances bushfire requirements can result in alternate development having to take place in order to achieve them. So I'd like some further information, if you can, about the ability of the sign that we see before us in being able to address those matters raised that will ultimately form part of a proposed condition 12 for a revised management plan.
Certainly, thank you for the question through Mr. Chairman. So I guess we worked through the DFS comments. As a local government, we maintain a fire hazard reduction notice for the high threat period from 1 December through to the end of April each year. Our fire hazard reduction notices, for example, for the land, they mentioned as not to the east but to the south, and they wanted evidence of an enforceable mechanism. Our fire hazard reduction notice requires tonnage per hectare to be exceed no greater than 8 tonnes of pasture per hectare. We also require pasture to be limited to no greater height than 50 millimetres, unless it's actively grazed by animals. The land in question is a land parcel that is often used to produce hay, so they actively manage their property from the south. To the east, as an area in transition, the road reserve, which Steve has mentioned, road reserves are certainly managed from the Shire's perspective. We've got a minimum service level slashing, particularly part of the shared responsibility as we enter the high threat period. We'll be doing sort of slashing predominantly of our rural verges, but within Byford, there are some areas that are still, I guess, characterised as part of their former selves in terms of special rural and rural areas. So that risk will be managed. Interestingly, just 300 metres to the west of this land is the new Career Fire Station. So the new Career Fire Station has been an advocacy issue for the Shire for the past decade, and we were fortunate to get an announcement at the last election, and that go live date for that career station is 1 December this year. So literally, if you go out there around the corner, they're literally building that at the moment. That's a $25 million career fire station. So that actually, for the first time, extends the gazetted fire district of Perth into our Shire. So prior to that, it's all been our bushfire brigades, volunteers responding to bushfire emergencies. But with the career station, which we say is a really, I guess, important addition of preparedness for our ability to manage the risk of fire on vulnerable uses. So that there, I think, is important to note. Probably didn't receive the level of acknowledgement that I would have liked in the submission that DFS did put in, but you know, it's pretty remarkable that we have that structure coming out of the ground just around the corner. I agree with the points made around the pressure for the hydrants and the availability of the reticulated hydrants. That's very important. As a Class 9 building, there will be the referral to DFS to ensure that the appropriate on-premise facilities are available in the case of an emergency. So the submission from DFS and then our subsequent analysis, which is on page 13, we noted in our mind compliance with the requirements of the SPP and particularly comfort with our own responsibilities in terms of forcing fire hazard reductions on all properties within the Shire, as well as maintaining verges, which we do as part of our normal local government responsibilities. And we don't believe there will be any need to alter the layout, configuration or design of the building as part of achieving a revised BMP.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Do you have a follow-up question about the fencing?
Yes, my second question is around streetscape interface. Similar question. The design that we have in front of us has 3 road interfaces. The design includes an interface to the street of solid fencing for a reasonable amount. There are 3 infills as shown on the plans. And there includes the driveway at the rear. From the information that I've received here, it appears to be adjoining properties on that side, driveway side, of residential. So I'm interested in the comments about the Shire's assessment in relation to both streetscape interface and residential interface. Typically, there are impacts with these types of uses in both scenarios, whether you have the play area at the back or the driveway at the back. But I note along the long boundary of this proposal, play area appears to face predominantly towards one of the streets, So I'm interested in your analysis in terms of both streetscape and appropriate site configuration for a proposal of this nature. And typically, as I say, the car parking would come off the road, which would also increase the separation.
Yeah, thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chairman. So in terms of initial pre-lodgement with the applicant, we noted the interface of sensitive land uses, so the residential street block to the west, as well as the residential street block to the north, which will be developed as traditional single dwellings. So the challenge was, what's the best way of managing amenity? And also, what does the site, in terms of its orientation, lend itself in terms of access, particularly to the northern and eastern morning sun, and where the western sort of aspect is configured. Typically, yeah, we're closing off the western aspect as much as possible in many of our developments, trying to embrace the early morning eastern aspect and, of course, the northern aspect. So it was considered the best way of dealing with all those considerations was to place the car parking arrangements parallel to the interface to the west, with some careful management through a combination of acoustic walls, as well as essentially putting the requirement for the southernmost car bays to be utilised prior to 7 a.m. in that highly sensitive period, and then the bays sort of closer to the residents on the northern side, particularly lot 489 or 491, being available for use after 7 a.m. in the less sensitive period. The configuration of child play, we similarly have control around prior to 7 a.m. versus after 7 a.m. Play space access. Most of our operators, as a matter of course, sort of typically operate on the basis of a general arrival configuration between sort of 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. With children being separated into their classes, usually around the 8 a.m. period. So it's very seldom that they will have outside play happening. So we think it's reasonable and practical to be able to address that noise issue through noise management plan that just put some of those limits in place. The acoustic wall ledge, I think, provides a bit more of a symbolic sort of treatment, which will certainly assist in giving those residents a physical barrier, which can help in the perception of the noise impact that comes from the use. The environmental noise assessment has been sort of reviewed internally by our team. We think they've posed the right levels of penalties for the impulsive nature of noise from car doors, the total nature of sort of noise from plant and equipment, as well as applied the right level of sort of noise or sign noise for children's play. And I think the page 22 sort of captures the predominant level of compliance, but particularly just some care around that prior to 7 a.m. car arrival, which is often the most challenging time, as staff must arrive from around that 6:30 a.m. period onwards. The streetscape interface does sort of seek to sort of recognise the need for a balance between an aesthetic edge versus an active edge. We do recognise the safety and security remit for operators to need to be compliant with their separate regulatory requirements. I guess the permeability that's provided in those sections along Lawrence Way and sort of and then sort of closing a little bit more off around Maeve Street and Orton Road, I we think provides an effective response to to the streetscape. It is streets on three sides, as you pointed out. Orton Road will be an extremely busy street, we think, into the future as it connects between ultimately South West Highway and Tonkin Highway. So we're projecting that to be a street which looks appropriately as a sort of an aesthetic edge as opposed to any degree of an active edge because of that activity, which we think around that 15,000 vehicles per day will be streaming as Orton Road connects between the Tonkin Highway and South West Highway. Lawrence is an important street access into the primary school and into the neighbourhood more generally. Currently doesn't connect all the way through to the north, through to Mead Street, but through filling out the undeveloped land to the north of the primary school, we'll hopefully see that happen. So having some open interface along Lawrence gives, I think, gives a degree of engagement with the street, and also helps elements of morning sun in. And then, just sort of wrapping to the Maid Street, we've got a couple of open sections, but predominantly closed out as well. So we think the balance is okay in that regard.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Those were my questions at this juncture. Thank you.
So just to clarify, condition 2, that approvals are now for a period of 4 years. Was that just an oversight, or was that deliberate?
That was an oversight.
Okay. So okay, thanks. You haven't mentioned it in the RAR, so I assume just accept.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Members, any other questions of Mr. Crossett? Andrew, in terms of the context, obviously the land to the south, looking at the photos, is sort of pasture at the moment, and the land to the east is sort of larger lots. In terms of the sort of planning strategy, are they long-term uses, or are they sort of interim, middle-term uses?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, definitely interim uses.
Yeah.
Land to the south has not for an extended period been held by Stately Property Group. So they've just received approval for their first 600 lots in this area. They're moving from west to east. So they own the whole tract of land, essentially from Tonkin Highway through to South West Highway, south of Ocean Road. About 3,000 lots in total. Approval for their first 600, and they'll just move their way along. So they're very much pressing the go button on that estate. Parcel Group and Department of Communities are developing the land that you'll essentially see in the area photo. Probably the good one is on page 32 of the agenda. I think the market will ultimately drive a solution for the landowners to the east. They are within the adopted structure plan area for Vineyard Grove structure plan. So developers are looking to always sort of bolt on additional land holdings. These are still privately owned, but are ultimately intended for development similar to what we see taking place on the west side of Lawrence Way. So
in terms of the issue that member Lafantu raised, that the bushfire management risk is obviously there's some high bell ratings to the south, but in the short term that's going to change, and potentially the land to the east, which is also generating some elevated risk, is going to change. Yeah, perhaps over the medium term. That's right. Yeah, and that's sort of, and we still are very hot on that issue because that interface is always where we're going to have our highest risk. So we'll always ensure our reductive fire hazard notice is complied with through the prescription of tonnes per hectare and slashing
of properties, and of course in this case the big addition invited, and I think for our broader community, has been that career station, which will be up and running later this year, which will really change the landscape in terms of fire preparedness and lessening those hazard impacts.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other questions to Mr. Trosser? Thanks, Andrew. So members, we actually now move to the RAR, and we have a recommendation to approve subject to conditions. Is someone prepared to move the motion in the RAR, or the recommendation in the RAR? Member LaFante?
Prepared to move with an amendment. The amendment is to condition 2. It is to change the period from 2 to 4 years.
Okay.
It's minor, hence the reason I am proposing to move our recommendation as written with that modification.
Yeah, I would agree that it's mine. Yeah, happy to second. Yeah, thank you. Can I talk to the motion?
Yes, so in support of the proposal, information, thank you to the officers and the presenters. Thorough report provides a lot of information in relation to the appropriateness of use in the context of planning framework. The site is, as indicated in the documents here in front of us, well over 1,000 square metres. There's been sufficient information provided today that the matters contained in the conditions, particularly in relation to bushfire management plan modifications, can be appropriately addressed within the context of the design that we have here before us, and that those can be managed appropriately, and that there are measures in place by the Shire in relation to bushfire management and associated notices. Overall, the proposal in its layout and design is appropriate and supportive. Information regarding the treatment of facades, including open fencing, create a streetscape interface, supports the overall use and design, and appropriate conditions and development information regarding the operations, particularly in relation to impact and management of the interface, and I'm particularly talking about the noise interface to the neighbouring properties, residential properties, including information about location of play areas, the management of mechanical systems, as well as the controls that are in place, including information in the recommendation conditions regarding the use of parking bays on the site to minimise the interface, as well as controls regarding use of spaces prior to and post certain hours. Overall, the proposal is appropriate in its context and its zoning, and I'm supportive of it.
Thank you. Councillor Mack, did you want to make?
Look, I'll just briefly add, the mover has spoken very well to that, and I completely agree with everything that was stated. And just to re-add, it was really well presented report and a very collegial approach from both the applicant and the officers, so I appreciate that. And yeah, the amendment is a minor amendment, I believe appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Anyone opposed to the motion? Anyone wanting to speak to the motion?
Chair,
I'd like to speak for the motion if I get an opportunity, please. Thanks, Ian. Thank you. Thank you. I would like to commend the design. Something that hasn't been mentioned yet, but I think is incredibly important, is the solar passive design of the development, so that the kids' play area is getting the morning sun, the afternoon sun, the hot sun is away from the children, because it is going to be on the other side of the building, and also with the design where the sort of the kitchen and the other ablution facilities and so forth are on the west side of the building. I think that that's fantastic. So I think that that's really, really good to see that that type of consideration is coming into our developments, and so I commend the that part of the design, on top of the other features that have been mentioned with the drive-through for the parking area, so that then you don't have trucks who are reversing with reverse beepers sounding at when they're collecting rubbish at 6 o'clock in the morning. So that's another design feature that I really appreciate. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Mr. Birch, were you going to make a comment?
just very briefly, Chair, thank you. Yeah, I fully support the application and the recommendation. it's important that these facilities are close to or in residential areas that they serve, which always raises some issues in relation usually to traffic and noise and so forth. And this one seems to fit fairly comfortably here and has dealt very well with all of those issues. So yeah, I'm fully supportive.
Thank you, Mr. Birch. I don't propose to say too much. I think the normal planning considerations have been appropriately addressed. Just a comment Mr. Birch made about submissions. With childcare centres, it is very common to have local opposition because of the perception of amenity impacts. In this case, it hasn't been the case. So that's probably a reflection of how it's been designed. So yes, I'm prepared to support the motion. My friend, did you want to make any closing comment?
No.
No? Okay. In which case, we have a motion to approve, noting we did change condition 2 to 4 years approval. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. So just finishing off with part B, item 4, form 2 applications, we have nil. Item 5, stat reconsiderations, we have nil. So that closes part B of the agenda. Representatives from the Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale, you're welcome to stay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, team.
So we move to part C of the agenda, Shire of Waroona. You can see Councillor Wamsley. Do we have Councillor Purcell?
I hope so. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Yes, I'm present also.
Okay, thank you. So, members, we move to item 1, which is declarations. And once again, if you could please declare that you have duly considered the information. Raising your hand is fine. Councillor Purcell, can you just confirm that?
Yes, I confirm I've raised my hand.
Right, okay. Just we can't see you, or I can't see you. But
Sorry, I don't have a camera, but I am using the...
Thanks, Councillor Purcell. So if you could just maybe
no, that's
say
fine.
audibly, just for the purposes of the live stream, that would be great.
Okay, so all duly declared, thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. We haven't got any today. Just for information, the standing orders requires local government members to make a declaration if the matter's gone to a council meeting. I don't know whether that's the case. Councillor Wamsley,
This matter hasn't been before council.
so no declarations are necessary. Any other declarations? No? Thank you. Duly noted. So we move to item 3, Form 1 applications and proposed battery energy storage on, trying to think where the street is, but we know where it is. We do have one presentation, 2 presenters. It was lodged a little bit late, but I presume everyone has had a chance to go through it. Councillors?
Yes, I have.
Yep, okay, terrific. So who's going to do the... Okay, Lena? Yeah. Yeah, Lena, as I said earlier, standing orders 3 minutes. So I suggest you focus on what you think is most critical.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for this opportunity to present. I'm Lena Ramley from Alinta Energy, and we also have Brussels Water here. While we largely agree with Shire Waroona's report and recommendations on Alinta's development application for the proposed battery energy storage system, and thank you very much, Craig, for working with us on this application, we would like to propose changes to 6 of the 9 recommended conditions due to practicality issues, and which we see could pose problems on delivering the project. And apologies for sending this through a bit late. So we would like to request an additional year for the validity of the approval, because we anticipate the tender process and actually engaging an EPC contractor for delivering this project will take a considerable amount of time. So we would like to request a year, so 3 years in total for the validity of the approval. And the wording of condition 2, the development will not be able to occur exactly how it is shown in the development plan provided as part of the development application. The final layout of the infrastructure will only be known after an EPC contractor has been engaged and the design work completed. However, we will generally stick to the development plan within the DA. We won't be going over the boundary, it's just the layout of the infrastructure. And I'll come back to condition 3 because we're not actually proposing changes, just to note. And the recommended DA requires several management plans. We're seeking changes to the timing of the management plans to be submitted to the Shire. So from prior to commencement of works, we'd like to change it to more appropriate stages of the project. For example, the stormwater management and civil works plans, we'd like to change it to prior to commencement of civil works, because we believe that preliminary project activities such as vegetation clearing and establishing a temporary site office can occur prior to civil works starting. And as for the bushfire management plan, we would require information such as technical specifications and materials, equipment and design to properly inform a revised bushfire management plan, and believe there's measurable increased risk prior to energization of the battery. So we'd like to propose change to submitting and having that BMP approved prior to energization of the battery. In addition to proposing changes to the plans that are required to be submitted, we would also like to propose an approval timeframe for the stormwater management plan to be approved within 60 days, as we think it's reasonable to have a limit on the time of the approval to reduce risk to the project schedule. And as for the civil works plan and construction management plan, we are of the view that it will be submitted for information only and not approval by the Shire. The plans will address the items specified in the report advice notes and will be prepared by the contractor we engage, and Alinta will review and approve those plans, and we will ensure that it meets our safety, environment, quality, and other requirements. Here I'll go back to condition 3. We acknowledge and accept that the approval will only relate to the proposed battery, but we would also like to ensure that the approval includes works such as potential upgrade to the roads within the lot for the actual development and the connection works, which will be the site.
So
Yes,
just to clarify, you said that was condition 3 you're referring to,
condition 3.
but you haven't proposed any changes to condition 3.
No, it was just to note that we acknowledge and accept that the approval will relate to just the development of the battery, but we'd like to ensure that everyone understands that if we were to upgrade the roads within the lot for the development, that would also be allowed. And there'll be connection works that will have to occur, which is cabling that will connect back to Alinta's power station, which goes across Jarrahdale Road to the rest of the development.
Members.
Chair, I'm feeling generous. I think we can give them an extra 2 years for the development.
Charlie won't push back on that.
Yeah, so that's an easy one.
Yeah. The other ones, well, there's more questions of probably the officers. It's interesting, does this, well, my question is, and does this require a building permit? Because some of these things that you raised would normally be dealt with the building permit, the sort of structural construction details and all that sort of thing. But in this case, I don't know whether you need a. Have you looked into that?
I understand that it's not required due to the category of development.
Sorry, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
But no, you might need to move next to Lena so that everyone can hear you.
Hello, I'm Russell. I understand that building permits not required for facilities that are energy generating facilities. That's what the category is. We've looked into that with lots of other developments.
Well, we might clarify that with the local government.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Francesca, you had questions.
Yes, I have a question to all of the modifications that you have raised, particularly in relation to conditions. The same questions are going to, or similar questions will go to the officers. I'll jump past condition 1, there's been some commentary already on that. Condition 2, when you talk about words, the change of the word from shall be to shall be in accordance to shall be and included an extra word generally in accordance. I suppose my question is probably a why question, and that's in the context of understanding the extent of changes. So typically a planning approval is determined on a proposal and a configuration as presented to us. Somewhat uncomfortably, getting an approval that is not specific to a proposal raises a planning question for me. And I suppose my broader question is that the planning framework, particularly the legal framework, mechanisms, there are mechanisms for modifications via Form 2 applications, whether it be to Shire or to DAP. I suppose I'd like some further information about this word generally. I have not seen as a planning condition in the context of a layout, and I'm trying to wrap my head around how wide generally might look or be in terms of both layout, intensity and otherwise, and it raises some concerns for me in reaching a determination on that particular inclusion of a word, because as I've already said, the planning framework does provide mechanisms that are fairly commonly used to allow for refinement of design as you move through the process. So I'd like a little bit further information, because that has already indicated I have some significant planning reservations about. Over to either of you, and I've got essentially, I'm going to ask exactly the same question. All my questions are going to be to the officers as well. One of the things I'll be asking from officers is comments to these changes, and I appreciate that the officers may not have had time earlier than this meeting to consider those. So over to yourself as applicant. Why is this word inclusion in the condition so important when there are other legal avenues available that are not necessarily significant time constraints on a development?
I definitely take your point, and it's yeah, your concerns are perfectly understandable. It's just with a development such as this, at this point in time, we're very uncertain of how the layout will look like. It's a very preliminary design, and we will stick to, we've requested for a 300 megawatt battery, and we state the we wouldn't need a larger footprint, and this is a conservative design. But as you progress with the project and working with our PC contractor, we're aware of how much the layout can design to make it work within the boundaries, as we've seen with our first factory project.
Yeah, and I think the question raised by Member Lafonte is right. One of the obligations we have a decision maker is to provide a level of certainty in terms of the approval, but also the conditions. And sometimes as a panel, we are criticised because the conditions aren't precise. So we do need to provide that. It is not uncommon, given there's a range of conditions, what might be approved actually changes through the implementation of conditions. So in some respects, the generally is not required because there's that facility, and in all likelihood, what you presented will probably change as you satisfy conditions. I don't know that I've been on a panel where we've imposed those sort of words. So I can appreciate the desire to have that flexibility, but I think there's flexibility in the system anyway. Sorry, I
No, I appreciate that.
Do you want to follow up with balance of the comments on this?
If you're okay, I've got
Yeah,
questions.
fire away.
All the questions.
No,
that's okay. My next question relates to condition 3. I know you say there's no proposed change, but you were seeking some clarification regarding internal roads within the lot and the works that you're undertaking on those. Again, similar to my questions on point 2, a couple of questions are: what was the application included? The plans that I've got in front of me appear to be a component, a specific set area, and there's nothing on the plans that I've got, and you can clarify that. Maybe the officers can clarify it as well. It doesn't show any link roads within the greater lot to this site. So I suppose from my perspective, it's again goes back to my earlier question. I'm trying to see some clarification as to this is a more generic open statement as in terms of upgrade of roads. There's, for me, some clarity sought in terms of what are you talking about. And the last point is some of these things may or may not need planning approval. They may be direct approvals via other mechanisms, and or they may have exemptions via the Public Works Act. And again, I note your comments. I note that you're not asking for a change, but I raise the comment to you to clarify. I've got a similar question to the officers. Again, for similar reasons, I would have some reservation on, and I can't speak for any of the other panel members, but I have reservation about suggesting that we are supportive, or that I am supportive of changes that I don't see any reference to in the package of documents that I've got in front of me. So it's a pretty broad question, but I don't know exactly what you're referring to in the context of your comments on condition 3.
I think that was to ensure any works that are related to the development. Say currently there's dirt roads within the lot. Say we would have to upgrade it for equipment to get into site. That would be also allowed under this DA. And when the battery is being constructed, like I said earlier, there will be some connection works involved, which will occur from this current lot to connect to Alinta's Wagerup Power Station, which is to the west of this property, and that would have to go underground across Jarrahdale Road.
So I might add that we already have an easement for that purpose. There's already cables running between these 2 points, so it'd be drilling another cable next to the existing one within the purpose of the existing easement
So my question, I suppose it's probably more of a comment than a question, is that those seem to be matters that are managed through other processes and sit beyond some of our commentary, and we don't have the detail on them. So I suppose my comment is more around, I understand what you're saying, but I don't know that as a determining body, given your comment about no proposed change to condition 3, that it could be implied that all those other elements referred to in your issues and notes would be any definitive position from us. Because if you've already got an easement, you've got legal rights there. If you're changing the grading of an existing approved road reserve, again, don't need a planning approval. They're through different mechanisms. If you're laying cabling underground for work, you might have exemptions through public works legislation. So those are matters beyond our jurisdiction. And so I suppose I'm really explaining that from my perspective, I've read your document in terms of your issue and note, but I'm not forming any judgment and not committing to agree with those words, even though I know you say no change. I just wanted to clarify that. That's only my comments. They're not suggesting any other comments from panel members, other members. Now go to comment 4. Could you clarify a little bit further why you've included this within 60 days, which I assume is an expectation. There's a time-limited approval process on the Shire. And I asked that in the context of some further clarification. I am acutely aware that typically most statutory processes that are undertaken by the Shire, be it planning and or building or others, have a stop the clock process, which says if applicant doesn't provide the information, the statutory agency can't turn it around. There's obligations on both. So I'm a little bit interested in and a little bit uncomfortable with language that sets a time frame where we are unclear about what that fundamentally means in terms of determining it. So again, over to you. And I'd also like, in responding to that, when you talk about prior to commencement of civil works, have you got any clarification in relation to the extent of work you are talking about?
Would you like to talk about the civil works?
Yeah, I suppose the definition of works is pretty broad, and there's lots of preliminary works that can be undertaken for projects such as this that are, I guess you'd call preliminary, but will not have any influence on the ultimate grading or stormwater design for the project. And the ability to, in order to have less impact on project schedule and therefore risk to the project, it's helpful to be able to undertake those things that will not impact the outcome that we're trying to control before the approval is given for the things that are controlling that outcome.
So what sort of things do you
For
think
example, like Lena mentioned earlier, some vegetation clearing.
Yeah, Chair, can I just ask, this might help, if I can ask the Shire, do they need, can they go ahead with some vegetation clearing and putting a site office in without necessarily having to have all these other plans in place? I would have thought that might not necessarily be a problem for them.
Yeah, certainly in this development application, I have no objection to that. Consider the incidental for site office, it's generally accepted that something like that needs to go ahead. And in terms of vegetation clearing, they've proposed the extent of vegetation clearing. We don't have any objections.
So would that take away a lot of your concerns?
Conceptually, yes, that's exactly what we're after. Yep. If that doesn't get included in the definition of works, then it's, yeah.
This is not a question, it's a comment. It is not unusual with these sorts of developments. There's close negotiation with the local government once the DA is approved, and there is that flexibility, as I mentioned earlier, for some, let's say, minor works that perhaps aren't captured by the conditions. but are matters that are negotiated with the council, and the decision maker doesn't need to impose conditions to control that. We issue an approval to the DA and impose conditions, and they are generally negotiated and successfully negotiated, because very little comes back to the panel. So I think, I don't know the degree of liaison you've had to date with the local government, but I would encourage you perhaps do more. And I think there's probably based on what the RAR is saying, a good level of acceptance of the development. So that might overcome some of the issues that you're raising and trying to satisfy.
Chair, if I can add to that, I mean, if it's considered a material effect on the planning framework, if you like, then yes, that would be a concern. But if it wasn't material, for example, I'm just plugging so if these little boxes store batteries, if you took half a dozen out, I wouldn't see that as, or even maybe if you added a couple more, I wouldn't see that. Talking on after Shire here, I wouldn't see that as a material change, and it would probably be within the scope. Assuming this approval goes through, it would be within the scope of that approval. If that's a concern, then that you're concerned, it may not necessarily be a problem. It is, yeah, it's whether it has a material effect on the planning matters that are under consideration.
I understand. I suppose Alinta, just background for everyone, Alinta has a very high bar and a strong focus on compliance. So I guess the background to these comments and requests for changes are to cover potential unlikely, but a potential non-compliance because something happened which typically would be in accordance with a normal project development and delivery, which could be read to be not in compliance with the condition as written. So we do have a good relationship with Craig and the Shire, and we have talked, Lena and Craig have talked a lot over the last few months. But this is not intended to try and be picky. This is, there's a big corporate structure looking down on us to make sure we are very compliant in all regards, and that's the driver for these comments.
That's understood. I mean, I think what Fran's driving at, if it was a material change, then I don't think it would be appropriate for us to give you that flexibility. But there is immaterial changes. There's that flexibility there.
That's much easier.
My next question is more just a clarification on condition 7. You've asked for change. You've asked for it to rather than commencement of work, energisation of the battery energy storage system. And I understand that links to your BMP, bushfire management plan. And I suppose from my perspective, it's unusual again, but there's a risk for yourself if the BMP requires works beyond your lot. So typically we require these before you start doing any kind of major on-site works to ensure you can in fact operate without having to add additional measures in place or treatments in place because it conflicts with another document. So typically those documents occur earlier than energisation. Could you clarify further, just from my perspective, an understanding of why you're comfortable that energisation would result in a compliant amended BMP? It's not leaning on or not relying on obligations beyond the boundary of your site.
The BMP is going to be heavily informed by the equipment and the detailed design. Detailed design is often not done when you start doing the project. And you may start the civils and know exactly where the boxes are going, but not have the specification for the fireproofing of the cable runs or something like that. So that's obviously a risk we need to manage, and we don't want to build something that's going to burn down or is going to cause a fire. But in order to optimize the project schedule, the ability to change a specification during design to meet the standard you need to meet, and therefore an adequate BMP, would be very helpful. It would be quite difficult. Sorry. You would remove the ability for optimizing the project if there's a requirement to have a design advanced enough, early enough to get the BMP approved before we started anything.
Thank you. And my last questions relate to both condition 8 and 9, same sort of question. This is going to go to officers as well. In both those instances, you have referred to some changes for information. In relation to these types of conditions, I'd like some further clarification. The first one relates to civil works, civil plans, and this will probably be a clarification from officers as well. Typically, these conditions relate to your connection into Shire-controlled matters. Likewise, the construction management plan typically deals with external impacts and how you manage those beyond your border to those that surround you. So I'm interested in understanding how you read those conditions, because in both instances you've asked for those to be for information, and they would typically be, as I say, because the works would have impacts beyond the subject side, either to the Shire's network, managed network, or to, in terms of construction management, it's around the impacts of construction. So things like truck movement, parking, those sorts of things, hours of movement that may impact others, dust controls, those sorts of things. So could you clarify how you interpreted those? Because it may be in the interpretation that the language is different, and then officers, I'm going to have you clarify some of those.
Yeah, I think, yeah, great to point that out. We can appreciate, you know, when we were looking at the conditions, we were thinking about the plans directly just in relation to the development and not appreciating the impacts outside of our development area. So understand why it would then be submitted and approved by the Shire.
Yeah, the construction management plan and civil works plan are a big part of the contract that we will let for this project. And to tier 1 construction contractors and delivery contractors who will have far more resources and expertise available than we do or the Shire does to make sure those plans are fit for purpose. So my interpretation is not what you said,
Okay.
was that the Shire wanted to control those plans in their entirety, not necessarily how it interfaced with Shire's the infrastructure and whatnot.
And community, yeah.
We're not trying to tell you how to build it.
Yeah, well, that's what I was worried about.
We're just saying that in building it, how are you going to manage things that might have an impact on everyone, on your neighbours?
Perfectly reasonable.
Yes.
Yep.
Members, any other questions?
Just in relation to the bushfire. Sorry, I'm getting confused here. It's interesting that I think I'm yet to find a bushfire management plan that has satisfied DFES. One of the first ones is the vegetation classification. It always seems to be in dispute, but somehow it gets resolved eventually. But just generally speaking, I mean, one of the things that DFES talked about was relocating everything outside the, and was this the one that there was a delay in getting the RAR here because of, and so have some of those things been worked through now with DFES? Because I mean, if you have to shift everything, I would think that would kill the whole project. So that's been resolved.
So back to the first point, which is generally in accordance with question, the design that is attached to the application is really just a concept on a piece of paper. Right? There's been no real engineering engagement with a delivery contractor because it's too early for that. And part of the specification that we will send out for tender will be you have to meet certain fire standard. And if you can't do it at this line, then you're gonna have to sit back and do it at this line. So it's, we need to understand all the constraints we have on us so we can tell the designers and the bidders what those are, and they give us their answer. Now, it might not be the answer that we thought it was gonna be, and that's fine, but part of it will be the ability to operate and build this thing in a suitable manner for bushfire.
And let me say, it's one of the risks that applicants need to consider when they're lodging plans for approval. So your comment about it being conceptual, and that's fine, we're able to approve something like that. But the risk you run is that as part of the detail, it is significantly different to what we approve and you need to come back. So you manage that risk as the applicant, and Mr. Birch is quite right that DFIS is one of the organisations we struggle with a little bit, and you would have heard the comments in relation. Previous application was basically cleared land surrounding, but it's still a high fire risk. So, legitimate issue we need to address and manage. But yes, if as a result of detailed work it changes, well, then you're going to have to come back, essentially. We can't provide sufficient flexibility that, you know, you can do whatever you like. That's not going to happen. Members, any final questions?
Yes, can I ask one through the chair, please?
Yes.
Councillor Walmsley. I guess my first comment is I think it's a little bit not rude, but to actually change these or ask these proposed conditions this sort of late out. It was only, you know, I think it was less than 24 hours that these were landed on us, so I find that a little bit hard to take. I guess some of the wording, and I thank the panel members too for picking up some of these, the word generally. The changes to work on the 60-day limit, given that Alinta's chasing another year for in their proposal, 60 days seems a little hard. And I know the members have already mentioned that you know, given constraints with consultants and bits and pieces, that it could take a little while to get some of this information back. I think 60 days is a little hard, might be a little bit hard to take. The asset protection on the bushfire management plan, the energisation, I'm still trying to come to terms with that. The start of any works, the commencement of any works, whereas they want to split it down to the commencement of civil works. I think the start of any works is pretty much the start of any project. So I think that condition, I'm not sure if I agree with that. And
Councillor Walmsley, we're in question time, so yeah, I'm happy for you to make those comments when we actually get into debating the item. But right now, are there sort of questions you want to put to the Alinta personnel?
Thank you, Chair. The question on the difference between energisation and actually having the structure built there, what does that make a difference as far as to Alinta on that condition?
Sorry, can you clarify, Councillor?
You had a condition where you asked about the energisation. Sorry, I've just lost my screen for a moment. Prior to the commencement of works, you've written out, you've crossed out commencement of works, and you wanted to change the condition to the energisation of the battery energy storage system.
Yeah.
Why do you see that as any different for the bushfire management plan, as opposed to having the facility sitting there, as opposed to the energisation of it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I understand. The question is, why would there be different time benchmarks in that? And the answer is, during some of the detailed development, there's likelihood that the detailed design can change to suit a different bushfire, to have different fire risk. So there could be, as we're engaging with suppliers, they can, change the specification of the cable conduits or change the specification of the panels that make up battery containers or something which can increase or reduce the cost and increase or reduce its ability to resist fire risk. So we can start in a practical matter, not an approval matter, I'm saying, but in a practical matter, we could complete the civil design and have foundations in place while some of the material designs are still being finalized in order to meet a specification that then fills out the gaps, if there are any, in the bushfire management plan.
So probably leads to my question, is this application a little premature?
No, because we will never progress a project with any suppliers unless we have an approval to go ahead with the project. I think it's very different. This sort of project is very different from the one we saw earlier in the morning, where buildings, you can pretty much specify everything before you need it approved. And any builder will build whatever you specify. The technology around battery storage systems is relatively new and it's evolving quickly. What I think it's going to be today is not what it's going to be tomorrow. So it's actually would be impossible to have a final design in front of you now that we would build.
So given that, a design that you may have in 12 months' time could be antiquated by the time you start the project?
That's possible.
Okay, thank you.
No. I mean, if if we change it to energisation, you're going to have to go to all the cost of design and implement, putting it in place. Is that energisation? It's going to be there.
And energisation is quite late. Yeah, it's when it's there and before you turn it on.
Is it possible that you can get there and you can't satisfy this condition?
We would never put ourselves in that position, but in theory, yeah. There's a point. There's probably a point between commencement of works and energisation. There's an earlier point that we would have this done. I don't know what that point is, because it'll be determined through this detailed design. I can guarantee you, we would not spend $300 million building everything without the certainty we're going to be able to turn it on.
Can I ask another question in the context of your question, if I may? Are we, both a panel and possibly officers as yourself, having a different understanding of the language works? Earlier today, we spoke about works as meaning some things could happen which, from a planning perspective, would not be classified as work. So there were your prelim design stuff and temporary building like site office, those sorts of things, is as opposed to the major construction component. Is that where there seems to be a difference of understanding? Because obviously the question that's been raised is around partway through construction, physical works being on site and those things occurring, and then doing a BMP, an updated BMP on your design. I'm assuming that you wouldn't be physically undertaking works without, one, your design being completed, approved by your own organisation that is suitable, and undertaking a BMP before you start turning soil. Is there just a difference between how we understand works and you understand works?
Probably.
Okay. So that I might ask a supplementary question to the officers to seek a clarification, because I suspect we are considering it from our different respective positions. I don't know if that helps.
And can I just respond to Councillor Walmsley on something earlier? And yes, apologies for the late notice to you. I appreciate that was not best look. The nomination of 60 days, I don't actually doesn't actually matter what the number of days is in there. But we have been in situations before where there's an undetermined amount of time for something to be approved by the Shire, and appreciate there should be stop the clock provisions and all that sort of stuff, and that's the case with everything. But having a potentially unending approval period for something causes lots of grief when we're trying to plan and contract things. So that was the concept, was some sort of certainty about when something could get done. What the number of days is doesn't really matter, but that was the idea.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any other questions? I did have a question moving away from conditions, or about the proposal. The site adjoins a COA, and is it a substation or power station?
Power station.
Power station. So I think in the RR it talks about the battery storage feeding into the southwest system. Is that just out of interest? Is it into the southwest system, or is it a coal, or is it a combination of both in terms of what it's actually going to do?
So there is currently under construction right now, as part of our first battery project, a substation belonging to Alinta. The substation feeds into the southwest, directly into the southwest system. This battery will plug into that. So it will not feed Alcoa or anything else. It'll go directly into the main electricity network.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So the benefit of this is that you don't have to, a lot of the infrastructure is there for harvesting this energy. You're not having to put new poles and wires and everything else.
It's there and nearby.
Members, any final questions? Councillor Wong?
Another, if I can, thank you through the chair. The bushfire management plan for the currently under construction battery, is it vastly different from the one you're trying to achieve in this project?
That I don't know the answer. There's another team that's delivering that project, so I'm not ultra familiar with their BMP or what the conditions were around it at the time. I think it's quite different. It was approved 5 years ago, maybe?
There wasn't a condition.
Oh, there was no condition on BMP for that one. So we do have a whole heap of fire assessment internally about how to deal with that, but don't know the form of it exactly.
Thank you.
Members?
To the officer?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to deal with the applicant, and we're done. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Craig, do you want to move into the warm seat? So we've got Craig Zanotti, obviously Shire officer. Craig, did you want to make any overall comments? You've been listening to the questions about the application or response to the condition, perhaps?
I think it might be better if we work through each condition, perhaps.
Yep.
That's probably my preference.
Yep.
Happy to go with that.
So you've obviously seen the request for modification of conditions. Do you want to move through those quickly?
Yes. Yeah. So condition 1 had no objection to whether it's 3 or 4 years there issue. So,
Craig, you aware that DAP approvals are 4 years? That's
I
the
thought it was
default.
another that. Yes. Condition 2, I think condition 3 generally covers some of the minor or incidental works that I need to anticipate. I've got a little bit of reservations around the use of the word generally and how much how much scope there is around that. Condition 4, no objection to the change there on ruling out or amendment from commencement of works to civil works. That is fine. With regards to the approved stormwater management plan being approved within 60 days, I have objections or concerns with regards to that, primarily because our processing times can be pretty quick turnaround, 7 to 14 days. My experience is generally on the basis of the adequacy of a management plan. So if a management plan addresses all of our concerns, we can have that turned around within, as I said, 7 to 14 days. It's more so if the management plan has serious deficiencies with addressing certain issues. If the clock is running down, my concern is we're put in a position where we have to approve a plan that doesn't address a number of key issues. So that's my comments on that. Regarding bushfire, point 7, I do. So, from my understanding, with the linter, the energisation of the battery storage systems, that is maybe also the commencement of use. I think that's probably the wrong time or trigger to have a bushfire management plan addressed. Essentially, there's a number of key factors, a number of issues that DFS have raised, which could have an impact on the layout and siting of the development, especially when they talk about asset protection zones being contained within the property and width of strategic fire breaks or internal access roads or hydrants or water tanks. There's a number of changes there that if we were to develop all the infrastructure and then leave the bushfire management plan prior to the use, we could end up with a development that is stalled in its use because there might not be any flexibility around accommodating an asset protection zone on site. So I would urge that the private commencement of works is retained. Condition 8, no objection there for the removal of commencement of works to civil. This mainly talks to conditions 8 and 9. We think it best that we function as a regulatory authority in regards to civil works and site or construction management plan. Our main concerns are around how they're going to impact neighbours. So obviously it's a large construction project, there's many moving parts. We're not going to dictate how things are done, just making sure that waste, truck movements, dust are all mitigated and don't impact our colours property. Because I think our colour is the major landowner area. And that's
Okay, thank you. So response on the applicant's request. Members, questions of Mr. Zanotti?
In relation to Chair, if I could, in relation to conditions 7, I mean, they come up with a bushfire plan that satisfies the condition. If something changes along the way with the design or construction, then there would be scope for alterations to the bushfire plan management plan, as long as it still met the DFS requirements. So wouldn't necessarily need a plan in place that works, but wouldn't necessarily be locked into that if
we found another solution further on the way, as long as it still works.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that helps.
Yeah, that's correct. If they manage to demonstrate that certain batteries or other infrastructure at a higher radiant heat tolerance, then there's obviously scope to reduce the width of the asset protection zone for other infrastructure.
Members? Oh, Francesca.
Could you clarify for me in relation to condition 8 and 9, particularly the language you refer to, are those appropriately addressed, the concerns when we talk about information, in advice notes, which seeks to clarify what those things should include, particularly with reference to impact on neighbouring properties? It's in the context of comments made in relation to for information, that you said that it generally support the change in the word civil works. As I say, that condition also ties to advice notes. Does that provide the clarity? Obviously, from both parties, what I'm hearing is you don't want to get bogged down in the detail of the issue, it's more the impact on the external network, infrastructure, or amenity of the surrounding area. Does that sufficiently cover the external?
Perhaps the advice notes would benefit from some clarification around the civil works component that the conditions could address.
We've listed them, or you've noted them in advice 6. Looking at doing something further. Seems to cover.
Both.
Well, it seems to me that both parties are saying something similar, that clarity in relation to the technical elements that you need to focus on and continue to work. And it appears that the Shire is trying to focus down questions about external impacts, such as raising ground level, substantial things that have impact beyond the site itself, whether it be water direction flow, whether it's through retaining or other surface treatments, whether it be the works that create impacts on external interface. Is that what these both conditions and advice notes are attempting to clarify?
I think so. I think that they adequately explain what we're trying to address, but should the applicant still have some concerns going forward, happy for the amended advice notes to clarify that.
Thank you.
Councillors, any questions of Craig's and Noddy? No? No? Members, any final questions?
Yes, sir, I do have one other.
Yes.
So the comment is in relation to condition 4. There were concerns about 60-day time limit, particularly in relation to model information being received. Do you have any issues regarding a time frame which is sort of relevant, subject to all relevant conditions, or relevant material and information being provided, or is it generically the time frame, having any time frame in there?
I do have generally a problem with time frame being specified. I mean, as I said before, our processing time frame would be pretty adequate, but then it comes down to if we modified it to my preference would be for both of that time frame, just because that can lead to a bit of interpretation issues.
Thank you.
Something best.
No? Okay. Craig, thank you. So, members, we now move to the actual RAR, and we have a recommendation in the RAR to approve subject to conditions. Is someone prepared to move the recommendation in the RAR? Member Lafante,
I'll second.
Member Birch,
Chair, in seconding, can I ask the mover if we agree to include the valid period of from 2 to 4 years, which is the default period for a DAP decision. So that's condition 1.
condition 1.
Yes, I agree to moving the RA inclusive of a modification to condition 1 as
2 to 4.
yes, to
Okay.
4 years. Yeah.
Yep. So
there's also the region scheme. There's a condition in the previous one that we dealt with pursuant to clause 26 of the region scheme. So this is an approval under the region scheme for a delegation as well as. I don't see it as a condition anyway. It probably should be in the preamble, but maybe would be considered implicit. I'll see what the mover.
I think we clarify it. I don't consider it implicit. I think what the words we included as
So we can
to remove doubt.
Yeah. Well, if we can borrow from SJ's and say that pursuant to clause, so this would be adding a condition, pursuant to clause 26 of the Metropolitan Region Scheme, this approval is deemed to be an approval under clause 24(1) of the Metropolitan Region Scheme. Perhaps we tack that on the end of the condition so we don't have to renumber.
I must admit, I was thinking, is it part of the region scheme?
Oh, in this case.
Yeah.
It's for so it's
but it wouldn't be clause 26 of the
Peel region scheme.
I'll withdraw everything.
Yeah.
I've said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just so a point of clarification, in terms of that covering the Peel region scheme, you're comfortable, Craig, that it addresses that approval? Yeah. Okay. All right. So probably not
My
necessarily.
apologies.
No, that's fine. So we've got a motion to approve and just noting a change to condition 1, 2 to 4 years. Member Lafante, did you want to talk to the motion?
Yes, I'm supportive of the motion as prepared for us. I think it's fantastic that these works are continuing to provide support across the network as well as development in the region. So that's fantastic outcome. I understand the challenges that the applicant has in relation to some refinements which occur through your detailed design and the tendering processes. From my perspective, there are some matters that I am comfortable with dealing on conditions. A number of them I'm not, but overall I think the development's a good one for the area. In relation to condition modification, should I deal with that after or now?
After, please.
Yep. So they're my comments for the proposal.
Okay. Mr. Birch, did you want to talk to the motion?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm. Well, I mean, it's a fantastic proposal, and I think that the concerns, hopefully, the concerns that are linked to have, they shouldn't necessarily get in the way of proceeding as we've sort of discussed or explored through questions. So I'm comfortable enough with the conditions as they stand, because I don't know whether, as been suggested, I think by you, Chair, that we can offer maybe the extent of flexibility that's being sought here, and as mentioned, there is that flexibility if things have to be changed that have no material planning consequence, then they can be dealt with through the process without having to get new approvals or anything like that. It's interesting, conditions 2 and 3, always when I see these conditions, I think, well, there are other plans out there that we don't know about, but what are we supposed to be considering here? So I would think, if anything, they should be an advice, maybe they should be an advice note. I'm not going to suggest that we change that. But to have to say that someone submits a plan and then to have to make a condition that they have to comply with that plan, because that's the one we're considering, then that seems a bit odd to me. But anyway, yeah, so I don't, but I'm not suggesting that we change that, because that's not uncommon. We see that condition pop up. But like I say, I am inclined to accept the recommendation as proposed, and I think I'd like to think that that's probably the proper process and the safest process for everyone. And as discussed, I think there is some flexibility to deal with some of these some things that might crop up through the detailed design process. It's unusual that we deal with a planning matter that doesn't require a building licence, so that takes out an important step in the process that a lot of these things can be dealt with at that stage anyways.
Thank you, Mr. Burge. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Anyone else wanting to speak to the motion?
Through the chair.
Council, yeah, I did cut you off before, and I think the comments you were making before are probably appropriate now, if you want to perhaps restate those.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I think they've been covered. I especially like panel member Lafante's take on these, which has been looking out for our interests, I think. We're quite excited, I guess, as a council for a development such as this size. It feeds in fairly well to what at the moment there's other that have already been other developments that have been approved around renewable energy in our Shire, and I think something like this will feed in very well to the energy storage. So yes, I understand that the emerging technologies as well. Every day there seems to be a better and smaller and more compact ways of doing it. Maybe in a few years' time, it might not be this entire site. It could be concentrated. So it is a bit of a moving feast, a little bit hard to perhaps for us to get our head around. But I think the considerations and that there will be Alinta will do a good job, I believe so, and the public interest in a fairly obviously a company that's fairly visible in the community, that they'll in their best interest to do a good job on this. So just like to concur that I think it's a great project.
Thank you, Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Purcell, did you want to make any comment?
No, I'm happy with that, and I concur with what Councillor Walmsley says.
Yeah, okay. I'll be supporting the motion as well. I think from a planning framework, I think it's appropriate use. Can I also say that in one of the other panels I normally operate in, we have approved probably in the last 2.5 years 6 of these similar proposals with similar conditions. And I think the general issues and problems that perhaps you anticipate haven't occurred because none of those things have come back. So I think exercising goodwill, and I think you'll get that through the Shire, those matters are resolved. And as you've heard, it is a very worthwhile project that merits support. I think the panel also needs to be conscious that it needs to apply a degree of consistency and certainty in its decision making. So, yeah, I will be supportive. Member Lafante, you highlight potential changes, though.
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment. It's Amendment 1 for the minutes taker. My amendment is to Condition 4 and Condition 8, and it is change of following words. Let's go to the condition. In Condition 4, it says prior to commencement of works. I'm adding the word in front of works civil and leaving the rest of the condition as is. Condition 8 is the same comment. So prior to commencement of, and take out the word works, and we'll just read prior to the commencement of civil works. Prior to commencement of civil works, a plan. So it's a very small change My reasoning for that small change is.
Sorry, Francesca, before you
Oh,
do
sorry.
that. No, that's okay. I just want to make sure everyone understands the change that's proposed to conditions 4 and 8 are fairly minor to refer to civil works rather than works. Councillors, you understand that proposed change?
I understand the change. I don't support the amendment.
That's fine. We haven't got a seconder. Is there a seconder for that? I'm happy to second it. I think in the context of the works, it's minor. So, Francesca, did you want to talk to that motion?
Yes, my reasoning for the change to that language is to provide clarity around the substantive works that occur in relation to a proposal of this nature, and it also addresses some of the discussion that we've had today regarding enabling ongoing conversations between the applicant and the Shire officers around those minor temporary works that they might consider works, the applicant might consider works for which the Shire doesn't as part of a planning determination. So from my perspective, it ties back into the advice notes and provides that ongoing conversation, whereas the substantive activities, physical activities occurring on site would be associated with the civil works.
Thank you. I wouldn't add anything further to comments from Member Lafante. Anyone opposed to that? Councillor Walmsley, did you want to talk to that?
The clarification between civil works and works. I think any commencement of works is a commencement of work. So I'm sort of a little bit obviously opposed to that amendment, thinking that if this project got to a point where the civil works have done and then the rest doesn't happen, then what happens with that particular site? I guess you've already commenced works and you end up with nothing. So not that I hope that would happen, but I think it's the clarification between the civil works and works. So is it a two-stage process? Do we come back and approve works after that? I'm just a little confused about that clarification between civil and works. Civil works and works.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else wanting to make a comment or talk to the motion? No. Francesca, did you want to close comments?
Yes, I do understand the concerns raised regarding works. From my perspective, listening to the material, reading the material that's been provided, listening to the commentary that's been provided by applicant and Shire officers, that the next substantial stage relates to both procurement and the refinement of design, and particularly around the civil works. I'm comfortable that the proposal essentially can't move forward other than minor temporary matters without getting the civil works resolved. And that's why I'm providing a clarification in this particular instance, given the specific nature of the proposal, unlike other typical developments which have a whole variety of other things going on. And it provides that mechanism for, as I've already indicated, the clarification of those minor elements that would not be considered substantial, or would not be considered works because they'd be temporary things like site office, etc. Temporary and removable structures.
Thank you, Francesca. So I'm going to put that motion. It's modify conditions 4 and 8 to include reference to civil works. All those in favour? Mr. Birchwood, did you have your hand up or not? No? Okay. In favour? Opposed? Councillor Walmsley, your hand's up? Yeah. Okay, so the motion's lost.
The amendment's lost?
Yes, the amendment's lost.
No, that was my only change.
No? Okay, so members, were there any other suggested changes to conditions? If not, I will revert to the original motion. And Member Lafante, you move that. Do you want to make any closing comment?
No.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve with a change to condition 1, which changes the approval term from 2 to 4. All those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. So I will sort of closing off the agenda. Item 4, Form 2 applications. We have Neil. Item 5, Section 1, 31 SAT reconsiderations. We have Neil. Part D of the agenda. Item 1, SAT applications for Supreme Court appeals. They're listed on the agenda. Item 2, general business. Members, any general business? No. In which case, item 3, meeting closure. Thank you everyone for your time and participation. I declare the meeting closed at 11:21. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.